Dear learners, welcome back to LMTI interview preparation series. And as part of today's discussion, we are going to work on the program where we are going to compare two array. And why we are comparing two array in the sense in order to ensure whether they are having same elements or not. Either the elements can be stored in a sequential order or in a random order. So just we need to verify whether the elements are same. So let me take two array. So in a A array, I have three values, and in similar to that, in a B array, I'm having three values. So now I'm going to create a Java program to compare the values of A and B so that I can verify whether the two arrays are having same element or not. And how we are going to do that. So let me just open the IntelliJ, and inside which let me create a new class. Let me give the class name as an compare array. And whenever we are creating the class, inside which we always need to create a main method. Let me add the main method with the help of the shortcut called as an PSVM, and then I'm clicking on enter. Inside which let me create two array. So let me create a two integer array and store some random values. So in the first array, I'm storing the value called as an 1, 2, 3, and I'm creating the second array, and inside which I'm just going to store another value called as an 3, 2, 1. So here both the array are having the same values but in a different order. And how we can verify whether the value of A present inside the value of B? It is pretty simple. So whenever we need to do the repetitive action, so we always use the loop. So here I'm just going to use the loop. So the syntax of the loop you all are aware, we are going to do the initialization. So int I is equal to 0, and post that I'm setting up the condition. So I less than a dot length, and post that I'm setting up the increment operator, and let me create the block for the for loop. So whenever we read an array, so we always prefer to use the loop. So here in our case, we are having two array, so which means we need to use two for loop. So whenever we use loop inside the loop, we call it as an nested loop. So here I'm going to implement the concept of the nested loop. So let me create one more loop. Let me initialize some different variable. So int j is equal to 0, and then I can say j less than b dot length. Okay, and then I'm just using the increment operator called as an j plus plus, and with the help of the outer loop we are going to read the value of a, and with the help of the inner loop we are going to read the value of b, and post reading the value of a and b we are going to compare with the help of the condition. And inside the for loop, let me just set up the condition with the help of the conditional block. Let me use the if statement. So I'm just using the keyword called as an if, and inside which as I'm going to compare the values. So which is nothing but I'm just going to compare the A array with the B array. So I'm just giving A of I equal to B of J. With the help of the I, we are going to access the value present in the A array, and with the help of the J, we are going to access the value which is present inside the B. So how this nested loop work in the sense, so initially it will run the outer loop, and post that it will step into the inner loop, and the inner loop will be keep on executing so till the condition fails. So whenever the condition is failed, so it will go on execute the outer loop, and post executing the outer loop it will again step into the inner loop, and the inner loop will be keep on executing so till the condition get failed, and again it will go to the outer loop, and the outer loop will be keep on executing so till the provided condition is failed. So let me add the debug points and post that you will be getting the clear picture so how the nested loop works. Now Inside this if block, right, let me create one dummy variable. So let it be of an int c is equal to 0. So like why I'm creating like c is equal to 0 in the sense, because like in order to do the validation I'm going to use some simple logic. So inside this if block I'm adding the increment operator called as an c++. So which means like whenever the condition is true it will step into the if block. So here we are going to match three value. So whenever the three value matches with the below value, so for sure it will step into the if block and the value of c will be 3. So and suppose that like we can compare whether the length of the array is equal to c. So by this way like we can ensure like whether the all the values are present inside the loop or not, or else like even before starting of this loop we can do one more validation. So like we can compare the length of the a array and we can compare the length of the b array, because in some cases, right, inside the b array if I have stored four values and inside the a array if I have stored only the three values, what happened? So for sure, so both the array doesn't have the same elements because length is mismatching. Before starting the inner loop, so we can check for the condition, so stating that whether the length is equal. So whether the length of A array is equal to a length of B array. So one and only if the length are equal, we can execute this for loop. Okay, so this inner for loop will execute one and only if the length are equal. And at the end, so let me just add the sysout statement outside the loop. Now let me add a debug points, and with the help of the debug points, so let us execute this program and you will be having the better understanding. So let me just right click and run in a debugger mode. So now initially, right, the value of I will be 0 and it will check for the condition. As the condition is true, now it will be step into the loop. So inside the loop, right, we are going to check the length. So we know, so the length of A array is 3 and the length of B array is 3. As the length are equal, it will step into the if block where we have created the inner for loop. So now here it will initialize the value called as an j, and post that the condition is true, it will step into the inner for loop and the inner for loop will execute so till the condition get failed. So now the value of I is 0 and the value of j is 0, and it will retrieve the A array at the 0th index, and then it is going to retrieve the B array at the 0th index. Now here in the first 0th index we are having A value as 1 and B value as 3. So the no, it's both are not equal. So what happened? It won't step inside the loop and again the inner loop will execute. So now what we are trying to do here is like we are going to pick the value which is present inside the first index of A and pose that like we are comparing the first index of A with all the index of B. So in order to verify so whether it is matching or not. So now what happened? So during the second run, so the increment operator will increase the value of J and the value of I will be remains 0. So now it is going to pick the value at the B value at the second index. So now A of 0 is equal to B of 1. So again the condition is false. So now it will rerun the loop. Again the increment operator will increase the value of I. So now what happened? So the it will be like A of 0 is equal to B of 2. So at the B of 2 the value 1 is present. So here the condition is satisfied. So now what happened? So the value of C will be changed to 1. Initially the value of C is 0. As we have used plus plus, so plus plus in the sense increment operator, it will increase the value of C by plus 1. If I resume the program, like you could see the value of C has been changed to 1. Now again it will execute the inner loop, but this time, so the condition is failed, so it will switch back to the outer loop. While executing the outer loop, the increment operator will increase the value of I. So now the value of I will be changed from 0 to 1, and it is going to re-execute the inner loop. So whenever it is going to re-execute the inner loop, so the initially the value of j will be 0, and pose that like during each and every run the value of j will be keep incrementing. So now what happened? It is going to compare. So like the value of I is kind of an 1, whereas the value of j is 0. So now it has picked the second value, which is nothing but it has picked the first index. So now it is going to check whether 2 is present inside the B. So which is nothing but like while we executing the loop, so it is going to compare whether 2 is present or not. So during the second run, so it confirmed that, so it is the 2 is present inside the J array at the first index. So now what happened? Again it will step into the loop, and initially the value of C is kind of an 1. So now it will change the value, which is nothing but it will increment the value. So now the value of C will be kind of an 2 in similar way. So the loop will keep executing. So now the inner loop will terminate. Again the outer loop will execute. So the outer loop will execute till the condition is failed. So now the value of I will be changed to 2, and pose that like we are going to compare A of 2 with B of 0 and B of 1 and B of 2. So whenever it is matches, so it will step into the loop, and the increment operator will increase the value. Now we could see the value of C is kind of an 3. Now the condition is failed, so the inner loop will be terminate, as well as like in the outer loop the condition is failed, it will terminate the program, and it will print the output as 3. So which means like we have verified like all three values are present inside an array or not by with the help of the increment operator. So now if we need to add any of the validation, then what we can check, we can cross check whether the length is equal to C, because technically like if all three result matches, then the value of C will be 3. If only two result is matching, then the value of C will be 2. And how we can verify in the sense, by adding one more condition, I can say whether the A of length is equal to C. If so, I can add a sysout statement. So like all elements are present, else I can add a sysout statement, so stating that elements not present. So now what happened? Now let me, instead of this 3, let me give us 4. So now if I try to run the program, so what happened? Like it will print the output as element not present, because the value of C is 2. You could say I have printed the value of C because the C is 2, because only two values are present inside the B array. So the incremental operator has increased the value of C by plus 2. And suppose that like we are checking with the length, and as there is a mismatch, so it has skipped the if part and executed the else part. In case if we give the different length, so let it be like kind of an like a 4 comma 2 comma 1 comma 3. In this case, like if I run in the debugger mode after executing the outer loop, so it is going to check the condition, and here the condition will be fail. If the condition is fail, it will terminate the program. So because like every time the condition will be keep on failing, and the value of C will be remains 0, because here the length is not satisfied. And you could see the output, the elements are not present. Even we can compare the length. So this is how like we will be comparing the value present inside the array. I will repeat one more time. So we will be having two array, and in order to read the two array, like we are going to create two loop. So one is of an outer loop and another is of an inner loop. So initially the outer loop will execute, and post that it will kickstart the inner loop. So the inner loop will be keep on executing, so till the condition get failed. So once the condition is failed, it will resume the execution of the outer loop, and again it will step into the inner loop, and the inner loop will be keep on executing, so till the condition is failed. And again right, it will step back to the outer loop where it will check for the condition. If the condition is true, it will repeat the process. If the condition is false, right, it will terminate the outer loop. So by this way, like we can easily compare the two array. So whatever the values which is present in an array, so we can compare it up. So this is the simplest logic which I have derived, and keep learning.